This is part 2 of my project to build a replica Kar 98. The previous video introduced the project, so go check that out if you haven't seen it. In this video, I'm beginning to work on the stock. The stock is from an FN model 1950, chambered in 30-06. It was listed as semi-finished, which is very evident by looking at the rough outside surface, with the exception of this area on the buttstock that I smoothed out. But shaping the outside of the stock will come later. First, I need to fit the action to the stock. I'll inlet not just the top for the barreled action, but also the bottom to fit the trigger guard. Looking at the inletting that's there, everything is very square. There's very little in the way of curves that are required to fit the action. I'll add it in place to see how it fits. While the barrel channel fits well, the receiver needs to come down quite a bit. It's maybe a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch high. I'll remove the action, then flip it over to add the trigger guard. The rear fits well. The hang-up seems to be at the front, ahead of the magazine. Now to begin inletting the stock, I'll move it to the vise. I would typically start by adding the action and looking for where the wood is preventing the action from fitting down. But while the inletting is roughed out, I can move the action back and forth slightly within the guidelines of the existing inletting. What I'll need to know is exactly where to place the action. That will be determined by this, the recoil lug, which fits against the recoil bolt here. This is the recoil bolt. It fits in this recess in the inletting. There's already a rectangular hole roughed out for it. I'll compare the dimensions with calipers to get an idea if the recoil bolt can be pressed in, or if I'll need to remove some wood. The width may need to be relieved a bit. It's about 10 thousandths narrow. I think the issue with it not fitting earlier may be due to the threaded end of the recoil bolt. It's slightly wider than the rectangular section of the bolt. I'll need to relieve a small section in the middle for it to be able to pass through. I'll just double check that the head of the recoil bolt fits, which it does. Then I can get started chiseling. The recoil bolt looks to be canted slightly. I'll need to remove some material from the bottom here. The recoil bolt is fitting well now. I'll add the nut to hold it on. These snap ring pliers work well in a pinch for these types of nuts and bolts. Now with the recoil bolt installed, I'll add the action. The recoil lug here fits against the bolt. I'll pull the action to the rear so they're butted up tight against one another. This will be the final placement of the action. And with that, I can begin inletting for it. I'll look for areas where the metal is touching the wood and mark them. Right here at the large ring on either side. And then back here, the curved area where the tang meets the receiver. I'll chisel away both areas. The action is fitting in much lower than before, however the tang is still above the wood line. It seems that there's only a few small areas on the rear preventing it from going down. I'll mark them, and then chisel them away. There's no remaining obvious areas of wood that are preventing the action from going down more. However, it's still about 50 thousandths high, judging by the tang, which should be flush or just below flush. When that's the case, I need a marker of sorts to show where the action is touching. I like to use lipstick, since it's very easy to wipe on and off, not to mention it comes in a variety of colors. More traditional methods are soot from a candle, or ink known as inletting black, but I'm covering all the areas of the action that could be touching the wood. With the action pressed down to transfer the lipstick to the wood, I'll remove the action. I can see some pink on the sides, near the top of the wood line. Now it's just a matter of removing these areas before adding the action again. That may have allowed the action to be lowered a bit, however it's still high. Something at the rear is stopping it. Looks like there's some pink here. It's still high. I can feel some flex in the action here, and here as well. Going backwards, not so much. It's something in this area that's stopping it. I don't see any areas where it's touching though. I'm going to add a clamp to apply more force than just pushing down on the action wheel. That definitely lowered it, though it came at the expense of the barrel lifting up. That tells me that the obstruction is somewhere ahead of the clamp. I'll move the clamp forward to see if that area lowers at all. If it doesn't, at least it'll transfer the lift stick to show what's stopping it. There's quite a few areas of transfer. However, since earlier the action was flexing, some of these may be due to that, especially here on the left. I'll focus on the areas around here. Before I fit the action again, I'll add more lipstick. This is to cover areas that may have transferred to the stock earlier. Then I can add the action. I don't feel any flex at all. It's solid. And the tang is flush to the wood of the wrist. Looking at the bottom of the receiver, there's a straight line. It runs from behind the recoil lug, down the action, all the way to the tang. That corresponds to this flat area on the inletting. You can see how there's pink transferred down its length, showing that the action is fully seated along those spots. There's also good contact around the recoil lug. I'm happy with the inletting of the action. However, I'm not done yet. I'll clean the lipstick off of the action with WD-40. I want to add a few parts to it in order to see if more inletting is needed. I'll start with the ejector box. Then I'll add the trigger. I'll test that the trigger works, and so does the ejector box. I'll add the action with these parts back to the stock. I'll test again that the trigger is functional. It can move around without interference from the stock. However, the ejector box can't move. The wood underneath needs to be brought down. The ejector box can move freely, and now there's plenty of clearance below. But with the rough shaped stock needing to be brought down here, other areas on the top need to be brought down as well, such as the right receiver rail, the thumb cutout, the cut for the bolt handle, and even this small notch at the rear to clear the bolt when it's worked. I'll bring these areas down. The wood is either even with or slightly below the metal, just like it should be in these areas. I'm going to call the action inletting done. I'm adding the zip tie to hold the action in the stock while I flip it over. Now I'll fit the trigger guard. The inletting needs to be expanded at the front of it. I'll trace around it with a pencil. At the rear, it's already a good fit. It should only need work at the front. It's very tight. I'll give it a few taps. It's still tight, too tight, and it's too high. It should be a bit below the wood surface. And I should be able to remove it by hand, but again, it's too tight. I'll use a punch from underneath to drive it out. I'll need to fine-tune the inletting at the front. The wood fibers were compressed on the left side of the inletting. I removed more material from there. Hopefully that will get this trigger guard to fit. I'll see if the action screw will bring it down below flush. And that did it. I'll add the rear action screw next. The trigger guard shouldn't move at all, since it's already inlet at this end. Now with the screws holding the action, I don't need the zip tie anymore. I'll flip the stock right side up. There's 3 metal parts fit to the stock: the recoil bolt, action, and trigger guard. I'll fit one more, the butt plate, which is curved as opposed to flat like on the stock. It wouldn't surprise me if the length of pull is too long, since this stock is rough finished. I'll compare it to my Gewehr 98 long rifle. I'm using calipers to measure from the rear tang to the top of the butt plate, which I'll mark on the stock. And again measuring from the trigger guard, roughly straight across to the butt plate. I'll move the stock over in the vise, so there's enough room to use this contour gauge to duplicate the curve of the butt plate. I'll just need to flip it, then I can use it to transfer the curve to the stock. I'm going to go over the pencil to darken it and make it easier to see. Then I'll move it over to the bandsaw, which I'll use to make the cut. With the stock back in the vise, I'll align the butt plate in order to mark for the bottom screw. Then I'll drill it out. On the screw, I have a good amount of paste wax, which will help this screw cut new threads in the wood. Then with a pencil, I'll mark the top center of the butt plate, then trace around it. I'll remove the butt plate, then I'll align the top mark with the screw hole to draw a center line, which will be used to align the butt plate as I set the top tang over the wood, and trace around it. With it all marked, I can begin to fit the butt plate. Now that the small tang on top of the butt plate is fitting, I'll place it on the stock. Then I can look to see if the end needs any cleaning up where the bandsaw cut. This looks pretty good. It just needs to be smoothed out slightly. Next, I'll add back on the bottom butt plate screw. This will allow me to mark the location of the top screw. Then I can drill it out. Again, I'll add paste wax to the screw to help it cut thread since it's going into a fresh hole. As a last step, I'll trace the outline of the butt plate since I had lost my earlier tracing when I cut it on the bandsaw. I say this is the last step because that's all I'm going to do in this video. I fit 4 metal components to the semi-finished stock, the recoil bolt, action with a few extra parts added, the trigger guard, and the butt plate. Next will be to shape the outside of the stock to bring it from semi-finished to finished. Thanks for watching.